Hello everyone, this is INS Everett, and today I'm going to be going over my GTX 1070 Gigabyte G1 Gaming Edition, and we're going to get some benchmarking done, and I haven't overclocked this card yet because it doesn't really need it, but in the near future I will probably do an overclocking tutorial on this card. But for right now, I'm just going to be showing you the benchmarks and how it does in each individual game. Let's get started.
Ladies and gentlemen, the future is now.
So as for the benchmarks, we have several games that I tested, and how I tested them was I tested them in 1440p as well as 1080p. And I was making sure that everything was set to the max settings that they could possibly be set to, including anything that NVIDIA has that would give them a bonus to their FPS, hopefully, or detriment to their FPS, either way. And those didn't seem to make too much of a difference between the way the benchmark was run. So I'm going to start out with GTA 5. In 1440p, it had a minimum of 19 FPS with an average of 42 and a max of 59. This game, when it reached its low, was during the end of the test where there's a bunch of explosions, and this kind of reflects into the 1080 settings as well, because it has a minimum of 23, an average of 48, and a max of 74. The minimum is still high, but that's the same part where the explosions happen with the car running into the gas truck and all that kind of going on right during that part. So this kind of makes the game buggy and just slows down, and you can definitely tell that it's not playable at those parts. But as long as there's not a lot of explosions, GTA 5 is definitely playable in both 1440 and 1080p. Then I tested it with Batman Arkham Knight. In 1440, it had a minimum of 28, an average of 54, and a max of 72. The minimum was usually during the parts where there's a lot of rain and a lot of guys fighting and things like that. So I didn't see it drop too much to 28. It was mostly around 50 to 54, I would say. And 1080p, it did a minimum of 49 with an average of 68 and a maximum of 99. This allowed it to jump up a lot more, even with all the settings set to their max settings and all the different crazy NVIDIA works that Batman Arkham Knight came with. Then I went on to play The Witcher 3, and in 1440p this game is playable at 35 FPS for the minimum, an average of 42 and a max of 49. So you can definitely play this game in 1440 and it wouldn't have any problems playing it. Then in 1080, it jumps up to a minimum of 46, an average of 55, and a max of 61. It's still a playable game even in 1080. In 1080, you get a little bit more stability when it comes to the average. I didn't see it drop below 50 too often at all. So it's definitely more playable at 1080. But if you want that higher setting of 1440 and are willing to sacrifice a few small things like the quality of graphics and things like that, then you'd be able to play it in 1440 with probably a minimum of 40 to 50 FPS. I then went on to play The Division. I could not get this game to run in 1440p. It would elongate and kind of go a little crazy on me, so I wouldn't suggest playing it on one monitor unless you have a monitor that's specifically built for 1440. In my case, I only have one that's built for 1080, and it downsamples when it's played in 1440. This game just didn't have very good downsampling. But in 1080, it's definitely playable. It had a minimum of 41, an average of 61, and a max of 76. It really did rest more in the upper 50s and, mid 60s I was seeing. In Battlefield 4 in 1440p, I actually played in 1440p now. It had a minimum of 36, an average of 49, and a max of 64. This game ran a lot better in 1440 than I thought it would, and since most servers don't really let you go above 60 frames per second, I would suggest playing it in 1440, because even some servers don't let you go above 30 frames. So this game definitely, if you want higher graphics settings, 1440 would not be a problem for you. In 1080, it got completely destroyed by the graphics card. The graphics card ran it at a minimum of 59 FPS, an average of 86 FPS, and a maximum of 122 FPS. So it's definitely playable in 1080. If you wanted to play this game on a server and wanted to have 60 frames per second, no problems, 1080p would definitely be your bet. Now, granted, I did do this not on servers. I played on single player, and I go through the last level, the beginning part, usually 3 times, and then average out those 3 tests. So this definitely is only single player. I don't know how it would react online. Definitely, if you want to test it, go ahead and test it on servers you play, because every server is going to be slightly different. So if you're going to want to look for servers that have 60 frames per second, then this game can definitely play that on 1080p. In Fallout 4, I am running a graphics overhaul mod and a flora, I think it's the flora, green flora mod as well. So it definitely sees a little bit of a drop and a little bit of a spike in some areas. As you can tell with the minimums, the 1080 minimum being lower than the 1080, the 1440 being higher than the 1080 just slightly, which doesn't make any sense. So it's definitely a margin of error for graphics overhauls and things like that. So in 1440 I had a minimum of 53, an average of 59, and a max of 63. 1080p, minimum of 50, average of 59, and a max of 64. So not too much of a difference between the two. I think it's just because of the fact that the flora overhaul kind of messes with things and makes the FPS kind of jump and just up and down periodically. So definitely not accurate in any way, shape, or form. But I don't want to take off the mods because the mods make the game look beautiful. But in any case, it did drop a little bit. Not too big of a deal. It's within margin of error. 3 FPS isn't too bad. As for 3D Mark, I did 4 tests. The first test I did was 3D Mark Time Spy, which is a DX12 test. Tests at 1440p, and I got a score of 5150. This is not too bad of a score. They said it was a top 76 percentile or something like that. Not too bad of a score. And in the description I'm going to put down what my computer specs are so that you know basically why I got that score. My CPU definitely needs to be upgraded, but in order to do that I have to get a new motherboard, and I don't want to do that until around Black Friday, Cyber Monday, where I can get really good deals on processors and motherboards. So I'll definitely be upgrading in the near future, but for right now this score is decent. It's not too bad. As for Firestrike Extreme in 1440p, it got a 6864, and I say that's a pretty good score for this graphics card and processor combination, which I'm running at FX 8350, so it's not too bad. I then went on to test Firestrike Normal 1080p. It got 10,113. Definitely an overkill graphics card for 1080p, but not too bad. It was a very, very good score. Now as for Firestrike Extreme in 1080p, I ran this benchmark as a custom. I was trying to figure out how they scored their benchmarks, and I figured out that it's about a 2.74 time, or divide by 2.74 or something like that they do, and it's a very weird thing that they do. So this score of 8824 is not accurate. It is within probably either give or take 60 to 80 points up or down. I have no idea, as every time I went in and did these tests and tried to calculate how they worked, it definitely was within a 2.7 something range. So I just tried to figure out exactly how they did it, and it's very, very difficult. So this score of 8824 is semi-accurate. It's going to be either more or slightly less. It's not too big of a difference, so it's either going to be like 8790 or 8900 at the max. So these scores are definitely indicative of how it should be. These scores also show just how good this card truly is. I did not see this card really jump up in temperature too much. I think the max it got was 75 degrees Celsius, and that was for a few seconds. For the most part, it didn't go above 72. Also, the core clock and overclocked mode and things like that, just the gaming mode in general, it jumped up to about 1999 running certain tests and also running benchmarks as well. So this card is definitely going above and beyond what it was supposed to be giving me. So I see this card going very far. If you have a 1080, it's an amazing card as well, because basically it's an upgrade version of the 1070. But the 1070 is more than capable of covering 1080p and some 1440p gaming. So this has been your host, INS Everett, and stay tuned for potentially another video. I may just overclock my card for you guys next, so that you can see how good it truly is if you take the time to overclock it. But we'll see, because I don't think it needs to be overclocked, and I may just overclock it and then reset it just for a video. So we'll see you guys in the next video.